get started. Thank you so much for being here this evening with us. We anticipate our informative presentation going for about 30 minutes, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. A little bit of our overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We'll talk a little bit about the background of our coaches. We have about 6 coaches, not about 6. Nobody's like a half coach. We have 6 coaches on our team. 3 are here tonight with you. And George thinks he runs the show, but let's just let him dream. You know what I'm saying, people?
I don't count, clearly. I was
Exactly.
unmuted for that.
Exactly. So we'll talk about the background of our coaches. And no, I don't mean the criminal histories or backgrounds. You guys are watching too much CSI and Law and Order. We'll talk about their educational background. We'll talk about how the process has changed. And I'm glad there's a lot of people on the call because I'm hoping somebody out there knows how the process has changed. I have no clue. I'm just kidding. This is something that we stay abreast of. We have to. This is what we do for a living. So we are continually visiting college campuses, staying up to date with webinars and all that good stuff. We'll talk about what colleges value in applicants, what's important these days, a timeline, when to begin, and just as importantly, how. And then we'll give you some tips for visiting college campuses. Our group has seen over 250. So we've figured out by now, we're really quick learners. It only took us 250 visits to figure out how to do an effective one. We'll share our tips with you. We'll talk a little bit about why you might consider hiring a private college counselor. And then we'll talk a little bit about the logistics and talk about what customers love about us. It's really what they love about me. But, you know, for the purposes of the presentation, we'll share the wealth. I do want to mention that in general, one of the things that sets us apart is that all of the team members are lifelong educators, all of our coaches. That means no one's doing this as a second act or a new career or hobby. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is just something that we've all done for our entire careers. There are 2 coaches that we rotate on and off for these presentations. So in the audience, but not presenting tonight, is Caroline Byers, and she is dynamite. She worked locally at Holy Child in the McLean School and Mercersburg in Pennsylvania. She went to Bucknell for undergrad and then got her master's from Harvard because she's so fancy. And then we also have Barbara Hancock, who locally worked at the Potomac School. She obtained her undergrad at UVA, and then she got a master's from Georgetown in English. She was also a graduate fellow in Georgetown, in the Writing Center. So that means every time we send her an email, we double check it because we know she's always silently correcting our grammar. But anyway, that's a little bit about our team. And I will introduce myself briefly. I gotta tell you, every time I look at this profile picture, I'm reminded of my college buddies from Duke, who I'm still buddies with, and they say that I look like, in this profile picture, Macy's Employee of the Month, which is not the look I was going for. I thought I was rocking that cardigan, but obviously I'm not wearing the cardigan tonight, and I'll probably burn that cardigan. Anyway, as for my own background, I've been in education for 25 years, either as an English department chair or director of college counseling, college counselor, English teacher. Some of the schools I've worked at here over those 25 years are the McLean School in Potomac, Stone Ridge in Bethesda, and St. Andrews in Potomac. I've had 2 kids of my own go through the process who taught me much more about it than I ever could have imagined, based on the motions in the process, theirs and mine. But they survived living with a college counselor. Maddie graduated from Duke, and she is teaching high school English in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Aiden is a junior at University of Miami, studying theater arts and heading to London on Friday, which is totally freaking me out. So if anybody wants to stay on after this call and give me some support, I would appreciate it. And I know Aiden would too, because I'm driving him insane. As for me, I went to Duke for undergrad and studied English and French, and then I got a master's in education from Emory with a specialty in teaching high school English, which comes in handy for the essay. All right, I will turn it over to my next colleague, Greg or Becky.
Hello, how are you tonight? And thanks for coming. My name is Becky Bowlby, and I'm one of the newest head coaches with the college coaches. I just recently retired after 11 years as a college counselor at Lower Merion High School, which is a large public high school located outside of Philadelphia and the home of Kobe Bryant. So prior to that time, I spent 30 years in college admissions at a variety of different institutions in and around the Philadelphia area. I'm very involved in both our state and national associations for counselors and admissions people, so that we can stay current. You can see my education here as well, but I have a bachelor's degree in sociology and religion from Wagner College, which is in Staten Island, New York. And I have a master's in higher educational counseling, as well as a secondary certification from Westchester University, which is one of the 14 state universities in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Greg.
Thank you, Becky. Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Schneider. I'm a head coach with an expertise in writing and looking dapper in photos. All right, but enough about me. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Actually, this whole slide's about me, so I'm going to continue to talk about myself for a few more moments. And I know Ms. Glenn Sparrow is setting her timer for 45 seconds.
That's right, Greg, and we have the ability to mute you, don't forget.
Okay, so I'll rush through this. I know Ms. Glenn Sparrow has also promised that I could call her Kathleen after 3 years of working for her.
Maybe.
I have been with the college coaches for 2 years. I have known Ms. Glenn Sparrow for 7. I was her son's high school freshman English teacher, and I take at least a third of the credit for his current success, both academic and as a young man. I have been in education for over 20 years. The last 15 years, I have taught at McLean School of Maryland, the last 5 as the department chair for English and literature. I have taught in public schools, private schools, and for Cirque du Soleil. My passion is really for writing and collaborating with students and showing them that the writing process is easy. And the only hard part about that process is convincing them that it is easy. Thank you for joining us.
Greg, did you teach at Cirque du Soleil or were you a performer?
I was a performer. No,
Were you in a cage?
I taught 6 young men who were in one of the shows.
Very cool.
They
Very
needed to
cool.
create their own schools, so I did that for them.
That
All
is
right.
very cool.
Great experience.
Greg, do you want to talk about this cartoon before I pop into the meat of the program?
Yes, this is Miss Glenn Sparrow as a child being read to by her father, and that's why she is in the business she is in.
Exactly. I love it.
So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how the process has changed and what it's like to apply to college now. A lot has changed since you have applied to school, believe me. And really, the thing is that nowadays, more students apply to more schools. And generally speaking, it's anywhere between 8 to 12, although I will say that I've seen it up to 30, which I would never recommend. But anyway, they do apply to a lot of different schools, and we try and help them with that to make sure that it's balanced so that students have, if they're interested in applying to reach schools, which are schools where their GPA and SAT may be a bit out of reach, the school might be a little higher. Target schools, which are where they're aligned with their GPA and SATs if they require them, and likely schools or safe schools where students have a good chance to be admitted to. Some colleges consider what they call demonstrated interest. And what that means is that they track your interactions with the college, whether that's through emails, if they come to visit the high school, college fairs. If you go to the college and visit and do an admissions information session, they'll track that as well. One of the biggest things that's changed, though, over the years is selectivity. So schools that were considered safe, maybe back in the day when you were applying, these days have lower acceptance rates. And really the reason for that is a proliferation of the test optional schools. So prior to the pandemic, there were some schools that were test optional anyway, but during the pandemic, because colleges are businesses too, and they need to be able to run, a lot of schools did away with things that were considered barriers. And some of those were testing. So they became test optional. And now there's a proliferation of schools that are test optional. Therefore, there's an increase in applications. Therefore, the acceptance rate tends to be lower. And a good example of that is the University of Maryland. One thing that hasn't changed, though, sometimes as parents, I'm a parent too. I have two daughters who went through this process too. I'm sure I was real annoying to them because not only was I a college counselor for one of them, but I was also in admissions. So I'm sure I annoyed them, and we still do that. Next slide, please. So what do colleges value in applicants? I'm going to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to put my former admissions hat on now. As a former admissions person, the first thing that's the most important thing is a student's transcript. Is a student taking challenging classes for them, and how well are they doing in them? Are they succeeding in those classes? Another thing that's taken into consideration are testimonials or recommendation letters from teachers. But it doesn't have to be just from teachers. It could be from an advisor of a club, or it could be from someone from a religious organization, whether that's a priest, a rabbi, or a minister. It could be from an employer. Letters that talk about how the student is both in class and maybe outside of the classroom. One of the most important things, and Greg talked about this a little bit when he was talking about what his background is and how he works with students to help them with their writing, is looking at the essays. That's a very important part of the application process. And why is that? It's not only just to see how well a student writes, but it's also how well can they tell their own story. Each one of us on this Zoom tonight has their own story to tell. And this is really where the student can set him or herself apart from another applicant by telling their story. And this is really their ability to give their voice in the application process. The other thing that's important is, what does a student do outside of the classroom? Are they involved in clubs, sports? Do they have a part-time job? Do they have family responsibilities? Do they do volunteering? And why is that important? It's important because colleges want to know what a student is going to bring to their community, because colleges are communities just like high schools are. They want to know, what is that student going to bring and how are they going to enhance my campus? And as I mentioned a little bit before, some schools look at demonstrated interests. So you might talk to your student about, sometimes in the spring, colleges will come to the high schools and have visits. And a lot of times they do it in the fall as well. And see if a student is interested in going to look at a particular college and meeting that rep in person at the high school. And lastly, test scores could be taken into consideration. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there is a proliferation of test optional schools. About 1,800 plus colleges in the US do not use test scores during their process of picking their students for admissions. Some schools will still require SATs or ACTs. And a lot of times what they will do is they'll super score, I love that word, said no one ever, from the college, because trust me, even from back in the day when you applied to college and college applications were in paper, and we used to read them in paper, we would do the same thing, where we would take the highest math and the highest English or verbal score and put them together, because you want, as an admissions person, you do things that are going to advantage a student. So testing is one of those things that we would talk to you about during this process, because some schools use them and some don't.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline, suggested timeline of when to begin and how to begin. We always suggest you begin this process slowly with your student. You don't want those 1 or 3 word answers like fine, whatever, I don't know, or even the silence and the raised hands. You don't want to increase their stress level, or you don't want to increase your own stress level. So you want to make sure that your student is emotionally available, intellectually available, and has the time to talk and consider about college. You also want to consider all of your different options. There are a lot of different options besides college. A lot of students now are taking gap years between senior year of high school and the freshman year of college. But of course, if they are taking a gap year, then they're not working with us. So I'm not sure why we're putting that on the slide. So just pretend I didn't say that. Actually, no, it's really about finding the right fit. So that might be the right fit. And we're all about finding the right fit. That's how we define success, both for you and for your student. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. And this is just an overview of some of the timeline, the markers that you might set for yourself during the high school years. You don't have to start like Ms. Glenn Sparrow did in first grade. But we think by sophomore year, you should be wholly invested in not only high school, but thinking a little bit about where that's taking you into that next step. So you want to start thinking about course selection, balancing rigor and GPA, looking ahead toward test prep. And we can recommend a few good test prep companies that are good to work with, and also consider summer plans. Students should think also about not only their academic potential, but their potential out in the community and what they do for their community. Colleges want to know that students are well-rounded, that they're going to be academically and socially a good fit for their school, and they want to see students that are involved. So that's the time to start building that resume. In junior year, you really want to focus on individual colleges, as we said, college visits, and expanding your college lists. That's something that we're all very good at. Ms. Glenn Sparrow is especially good at.
Thanks,
She
Greg.
visited so many colleges. No, it's true. But finding that right fit, again, is so important. Coming up with a standardized testing plan. You can take the SAT or the ACT multiple times and submit only the highest scores. You also are building those relationships with teachers and with coaches for teacher recommendations. Anyone's going to write you a good recommendation, but if you have a particular relationship with a teacher in terms of taking multiple classes with that teacher or having a teacher in your area of specialty, they can add added insight to the recommendation. Junior year is also when students should start their essays. When I worked at McLean, Ms. Glenn Sparrow and I worked together, and we piloted a program in junior year in English, and we worked on the essay. So students came out of junior year with a completed, or almost always nearly completed, essay so that they could go into their senior year, focus on their academics and other pieces of the college application process. We also have summer classes we'll talk to about in a little bit. And we do essay work and we do common application work, especially the writing heavy portions of that, including the activities section. In senior year, you really want to think about your application strategy. There are multiple deadlines for multiple schools, whether you're applying early decision, early admissions, or regular admissions. Of course, you want to have your finalized college lists, show that demonstrated interest that Becky was talking about, prep for college interviews, and then something, I will skip over financial aid, but if you have any questions at the end, Becky's expert at that. But something I will mention too, that is often overlooked, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but that's the supplemental essays. That's why we often suggest getting the Common App essay, which is the main 650-word essay that's needed for all common applications out of the way, because supplemental essays, they vary widely and they are often very, very important, especially for smaller and more competitive schools.
All right, thanks, Greg. That was actually pretty well done. Not too bad.
Thank you.
And I know we're not in a competition, Greg, but I was just wondering if you'd written a book, because I have. So if we're keeping up who's, cooler,
Okay,
it's me at the moment.
I've written a lot of note cards in my day.
There you go. There you go. Just staple them together.
Okay.
All right, so visiting college campuses, this is actually the more enjoyable part of the process. It's a time when you guys get to travel together, so much fun. Just think Chevy Chase vacation, everybody and the dog and the pets in the car. But here are some tips of what we do when we go visit so that we get a real sense of what the school is like. It's often a good time to do do two different tours. So a parent or guardian goes on one tour and the student goes on the other. Different tour guides will bring up different questions. The tour guides will have different majors, different activities, and you can compare notes at the end of the tours with each other. So it's kind of getting double the information out of one tour. It also provides some much needed space on the tours, so from each other, just a little bit of space, and then you come back together for lunch and everybody's happy. I pick up a copy of the student newspaper when I'm on campus, or I look at one online to find out what are the issues that students are fired up about, but admissions is not mentioning, like is safety an issue on campus, or perhaps racial tensions are a problem on campus. And also it talks about the good things. What are the happenings on campus? Maybe Beyonce was there last weekend, or maybe they were lucky enough to have me on campus last weekend. Who knows? That would be front page news, clearly. The most important thing about your visits is to try to meet the rep from your area, meaning if you're from Maryland and you're going to go visit, let's do Wagner College, Becky's alma mater. If you're at Wagner, after or before the tour, you could say, hey, we're from Maryland. Could we please meet the admissions rep who reads for Maryland? The reason why that's important is that rep is the same rep that's going to come to your kid's high school to visit, same rep who will be at college fairs, and the same rep, most importantly, who will read your student's application and advocate for she or them during the process. So it is really important to do that. It's also important to keep visual notes, whether it's in a phone, whether it's old school notebook, a Google Doc. The campuses will blend together for sure. And it is also really helpful when you have to write supplements. Supplements are those pesky little paragraphs that Greg was referring to. Oftentimes a supplement says, why do you want to attend our college? And if you have notes from the tour, that would be fantastic. Not pages and pages, just a few bullet points, a student tradition you learned about on campus, things like that. All right. I go where the students go on campus. Go to the cafeteria, the library, student center. What's the vibe? In the cafeteria, is everybody plugged in and stressed out during lunch? Or are they unplugged, having a conversation? Is it a warm Friday afternoon on the college campus? Somebody better be throwing a Frisbee, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do on a warm Friday afternoon in college. So just kind of take it all in, right? Meet with financial aid if you can while you're there. You guys do know you have to pay for college, right? You know, we don't do that for you, right? Okay, maybe we need a slide on that. I don't know. And then go through the local town, see what's the community like. Your kid is going to be there for 4 years. I know that's hard to get around your head. I thought my kids were going to sit next to me on the couch for 4 years, but much to my chagrin, they went off to college. Make sure there's a Chipotle. How many kids do you know are going to survive 4 years without a Chipotle? Just say. All right, go ahead.
I was ready to start. Okay. So just a few things to consider and how we can add value to that by being a private counselor. We work with an equal number of students who go to public schools and private schools. Public high school counselors are great, but they also have hundreds of students and they have limited time for personal one-on-one attention. And it's great to have someone get to know your student and get to know your family, again, to find that right fit. It's also good, even if you have a college counselor in your private school, to get an additional perspective on the overall strategy, more input on college lists, and on the essay. It's always good to have an extra pair of eyes on that. We are also available to you anytime. We work weekends, we work evenings, we work during the summer. It says so right there. I have canceled my Netflix subscription, my Amazon Prime subscription. I no longer have a subscription to Hulu. I have nothing to do but work, so I'm here for you. Actually, no, it's just great to get to know the student one-on-one And I think that's when the best work comes out, and that's when we can find the best fit. But also, most importantly, I think we have the professionalism, we have the expertise, and we have the perspective to give to your student that they are more likely to accept from, I think, a professional as opposed to sometimes their parent. I think Ms. Glenn Sparrow can speak to that.
That is correct.
Also means less,
You're right. Both my kids had college counselors. They don't listen to me. Forget that I do this for a living, whatever. All right. So we have a couple ways that we can help you. We have just a couple more slides here, and then we're going to go into Q&A. You can ask us questions about the college process or anything at all. This particular plan that is designed for juniors. It includes 7 meetings, a college list that is tailored for your cherub, and resources that we'll talk about in just a second. What this includes is an initial family meeting. We have your cherub fill out a brief questionnaire ahead of time. Easy questions such as, what classes are you taking this year? Have you thought about teacher recs? If not, we talk about that. Are there any colleges on your radar screen? We talk about plans for the summer, everything under the sun. After that, we'll make a list based upon the, hundreds of colleges we've seen and the reps and events that we've attended. We'll meet with you to explain the list. We'll talk about application strategy. We do a check-in with the student. A pep talk is if you were perhaps deferred from your first choice college, not denied, deferred, which means they'll move you and reevaluate you in the regular pool. Or if you want to drop AP Calculus, and we can talk about who doesn't want to drop AP Calculus, am I right? But we talk about the ramifications of that in the process. So we do application review, finally family check-in. Parents can be a part of these meetings, or it can be with the students. It's kind of up to you all, but we are great communicators and always let parents know what's going on with the process. These resources are included, which includes a summer activity database arranged by area of interest like STEM, business, fashion, all that good stuff. We include up-to-date admission statistics from the latest cycle, which colleges give the best merit aid packages. You can email us 24/7. We're not going to respond 24/7, but you can email us. There's no limit on that. This is $34.99, and based upon about 15 hours. And this month, insert Jazz Hands, cue Jazz Hands, $500 off if you sign up in January. For sophomores, a similar package, a little less check-ins because we want to start the process gradually, but you can take a look at that. The family meeting gives you an idea. If you go to our website also and click on these, it'll give you more details. For sophomores, less meetings, but starting in gently, that's $16.99. And again, winter special of $100 off. You can read more on the website. I will head over to Greg. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Glenn Sparrow. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the essay because that's what I work with. We have a package. We work with essays, at least 3 different one-on-one meetings with the students, and then extra revision and editing time. I think the essay is crucial to the application. We call it the face of the application because it's the one thing that is completely within a student's control. And that's why it's so important. A lot of things have already been set, like GPAs or courses or community service. So this is a time for the student to really present to the college of their choice themselves and what makes them unique and why they're a great fit for that college. We go through the entire process with them, and it starts with a brainstorming questionnaire. We will test drive topics. We'll see which topics have wheels. We often do something that's called a talking draft. We've all had a lot of success with this. We'll work one-on-one with the students, ask them questions, keyboard for them, so that we will get their ideas down on a Google Doc in their voice, which is very important. And then we'll use that as the process for further one-on-one collaboration with revision and editing, and then a final proofread to make sure that it is completely error-free. That package is $950. And then next slide, we also work one-on-one with students. A little slow there, but thank you. Well, if we're charging by the hour, I want to make sure that they're getting their money's worth here. So actually, no, we do work a lot too with other students who come to us with essays that have been written. If it's an essay that has been written in their class, maybe it's an essay that's been written with another college counselor, it's happened. Or maybe it's just an essay they've written for fun. That's actually happened too. And we'll always be honest with the student. We will give feedback. We will suggest edits. And then we'll come through with a second session for a final round of edits. Those sessions are billed at $275 an hour. We bill in 15-minute increments. And I have worked as little as 15 minutes on a particular essay. I've gotten a few essays that have been really very good, so I'll give it a final proofread. And then I have worked many, many hours. The same is true for the supplemental essays. These are really important, again, as we talked about earlier with smaller schools, more selective schools, specialty programs, and they vary widely from 1 to 10 essays, anywhere from 35 words to 650 words. But they are very important because, again, it's going to show the school why your student is a great fit for that particular school. So they are extraordinarily important as well as the other parts of the application. But since I work on the essays, I'm going to go with the essays as being the most important part of the application.
Of course you are.
Okay. So what do customers love about us outside of our wonderful wit and personalities? Our great hourly rates and our fixed fee bundles, that's for sure. We have 5-star Google reviews. And as Kathleen mentioned a little bit earlier, the number of years that our head coaches have between 15 and 45 years of experience, and the background and commitment to education is really very important when you're looking for a college coach. Check us out on Facebook and LinkedIn and register for a free intro call with one of our coaches to find out more. We want to thank you so much for coming tonight. And now we're going to turn it over to the Q&A portion.
All right.
Answer your questions.
Thank you, Becky, Kathleen, and
All
Greg.
right.
All right. So you all are welcome to put your questions in the chat. You may also send them directly to me if you want to remain anonymous. And one thing I would add that as we went through kind of our hourly rates there, I think one thing everyone should know is that all of our coaches have kind of 15 to 45 years of experience, and they are incredibly efficient and incredibly fast. So, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to sign up for an essay and it's going to take 20 hours for my kid to get it done. Well, that's why we have a fixed fee out there, so you can understand that, you know, we can do these things pretty quickly with just about any kid. All right, so we have a couple of questions here. I will start with the first one on gap years, since that one was the first one sent out. You all probably read it. I'll read it real quick. I'm sorry? All right.
I didn't
Well,
read
then
it.
you better
So go ahead.
listen, because I'm going to read it to you
Okay.
now, Becky. All right, so it says on gap years, we have a high schooler that wants to do it, has a great plan. Does that impact the timeline? Should we apply with the other students going directly, or better to wait, or both? Kathleen.
So that's a really great question. Gap years are highly respected by colleges. The reps tell me that nobody comes back from a gap year less mature or less aware of themselves. So it's a good thing. My advice is to apply as a senior with your peers, because you're all in this together, like the cheesy High School Musical, we're all in this together. You've got the college counselor at the school, you've got us or whoever's helping you. So it's a process, and to go through it with your peers while you're there in the school is really great. And you have until May 1st of senior year to decide if you're going to go straight on to college or if you're going to take a gap year. And you can defer, which means the college will hold your spot while you go do your cool program, and then you come back to that spot. So that's really a great program, a great idea. Those of you who are considering gap years, American Gap Year Association has great website, and it also offers college gap year fairs for great opportunities.
Good.
Becky, you want to add anything to that? You good?
No, that was awesome.
All right, super. All
Thanks,
right, well,
Becky.
I'm going to go in order here because the next one's a good one as well. Do liberal arts schools generally want to see 4 years of language in high school?
You want that,
Yes.
Becky, or you want me to take it?
I'll take it. Generally speaking, I would say yes. However, and they usually, but let me take that a step further. They usually want to see the same language for 4 years, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of schools are looking at that, the consistency in the building on the things. However, if a student takes like 2 years of Spanish and then decides they want to take Japanese or something like that, I think that's okay too. But yeah, they're generally looking for 4 years.
And I agree with everything you said, Becky, and I would just pop in from my time at McLean School working with students with learning style differences. Some had language waivers. So they were excused from taking a language, and many colleges do accept that, but Becky's absolutely correct. The more the merrier.
That's true. Good point. That's a great point.
All right. Fun
Next.
question for Greg Schneider. How much experience do you have in the field of art and fashion?
I have a lot of experience, actually. I have a background in the arts. And isn't the question actually, how much experience do you have with student athletes? No, I think there's
Oh,
a parallel.
this was a question I got directly, my friend, which was
Oh, there you go. Greg.
Oh, okay. No, I have a bachelor's degree in theater arts and then a master's degree in art history. And working with Cirque du Soleil gave me a lot of exposure to that. And I actually did think the question was about athletes, because I think there's a lot of overlap between artists and athletes, because there are special commitments, especially on their time, their organizational ability. And I like working with those people that have a lot going on, like I do.
You think you do, Greg.
I was just feeding Ms. Glenn Sparrow there.
There you go.
All right.
Becky, do you want to take the athlete question though? Because you know,
What
Kobe
is the
Bryant.
athlete question?
Kobe Bryant
Who's
went to-
running the Q&A here, woman?
I am.
Goodness.
Go ahead.
Sure, I'll take, what is the question about athletics?
Do you have experience with student athletes seeking to play in college?
I'll take that, sure. So the answer to that is yes. So I, and actually from kind of both sides, I worked at both a D1 and a D3 school. And at the high school, at Lower Merion High School, I was the NCAA and athletic liaison in the counseling department. So I handled all of the student athletes who were applying all 3 divisions, Division 1, 2, and 3. So the answer to that is yes, we can certainly help with that. Help with that plan and what it looks like and the NCAA regulations, etc.
Super. All right, this next question, I'm going to combine a couple. So Kathleen, get yourself ready. So the first question is, are internships valued by colleges? And then the next question says, my son plays lacrosse, but no clubs. How many clubs should I be encouraging him to join? So can you talk a little bit about activities as well as internships and how colleges look at them, Kathleen?
No, I'm just kidding. Yes, colleges absolutely value internships. They value anything where a student is kind of exploring his, her, or their interests. So it doesn't have to be the formal 6-week internship at NIH. It can be shadowing a family friend who works in a lab. It can be if you work at Chipotle. I guess I want Chipotle for dinner. I don't know why I keep bringing it up. Maybe you're interested in business. Maybe you ask the manager, can you, during your lunch break, chat with him or there about what is it like to run a branch of Chipotle and kind of build up from there. So yes, internships are valuable. In terms of number of clubs, if your student plays lacrosse, or any varsity sport, colleges recognize and appreciate how much time that is, how much of a time commitment that is. They get it. The fact that the student is balancing a huge time commitment and still doing well academically is the most important thing. There isn't a set number of clubs to join. I would encourage your student to do something that makes sense for him or her or them, because you don't want to just pile on a bunch of extra activities and then the student gets stretched too thin. So it doesn't have to be clubs. There's an activity section on the Common Application where you can list anything. You can list, summer programs that you've done. If you did a food drive, if you mowed lawns during the summer, if you were a lifeguard. So it doesn't necessarily have to be clubs. It's basically whatever you do outside of the classroom counts.
Yeah, and I think Kathleen mentioning the activities on the Common App there kind of brings up a nuance that I think is important to point out to everyone who's listening, which is there are just so many small pieces to the college application process that all need to be done well, right? So you would think the Common App, hey, here's some activities, no big deal, you just fill them in. Well, it's about prioritizing those activities. It's about highlighting the things that are really different and unique and you've made a commitment to. It's about articulating those activities really clearly, so that, there aren't, you don't say, hey, I was on the swim team, period. Oh, well, pass, next student. Talking about supplements, Greg's talked about supplements a lot. Like if you don't have an out of the park supplement for a school that you're really interested in, you're probably not going to get in. So again, there's just so many pieces to this puzzle that we help pull together for our clients. All right, so I'm going to skip to the last question because I like this one. Do you know how college admissions views students who choose not, in all caps, not to submit scores in a test optional setting, especially if many of the students' peers do choose to submit their scores? So kind of talk a little bit about the test optional scene and whether that matters or not. And that can be for Kathleen or Becky.
Up to you, Becky. You want me to take it? You want it?
I'll take part of it and maybe you can add a little bit to it as well. So when a college is test optional, then what happens is all of the other remaining pieces become that much more important. Okay. So it's important to do, like George was just saying, with the activities section, it's important to do that well. It's important to have the essay done well. The things that a student can control, their grades and their classes, their essay, their involvement outside of the classroom, that kind of thing. Obviously, they can't control what a teacher is going to write in their recommendation, but like Greg said, a teacher's not going to say, I'm going to write a recommendation for you and then write a crummy one. They're not going to do that. So they can't control that. But if they have, say, two teachers that they're thinking about and they have a better relationship with one teacher over another, then maybe that's the person they go to anyway. So what happens is, and you'll hear this as you go through the process, is that college admissions offices will look at everything in a holistic manner. So things are definitely taken into consideration. And there's been so much talk about testing over, I don't know, it seems like forever, but at least the last 20 to 25 years, talking about whether it impacts it, whether it's biased, et cetera, et cetera. So if they are test optional, that means that they truly are, and they're looking at everything else, because that test score is really just a little part of it. Kathleen, you have anything you want to add to that?
I think that was excellent. I want to just add one tiny thing. I see the second part of the question mentions, if other kids from your high school are submitting scores, does that make your student look bad? And that's a question I get quite often, and no. And this is something we put towards the reps all the time, because you all are asking these good questions. So we say, okay, if a student from, we're in the, personally, we're all over right now, but I'm in the DMV area. In this area, a lot of kids do take tests, but a lot don't. So the reps, we ask them, okay, if someone doesn't submit a test score from this area, are you assuming that they did poorly on the test? And the reps often say, no, we don't have time to guess if a student did poorly on the exam. Number two, many students aren't taking the tests anymore because of equity issues. They feel like the tests are rigged and are just not
Biased.
fair. And
Right.
third, a lot of students don't want to put the time and money into test prep when they know that transcript and activities are more valued. And the last thing I'll say on that is we ask the reps then back it up with data. Out of last year's admission cycle, how many students did you admit with testing and how many did you admit without? And it is remarkable that it ends up being about half and half. So yeah, I would not worry about that for a hot second.
All right, I've got a direct message question here about the application strategy meeting. That was kind of part of the, they say, I think it's called a game plan. So can you talk a little bit more about that portion of the package, of the bundle?
Sure, I can take that. I'm sorry, I'm talking loud, but and anybody else can jump in. Application strategy kind of has to do with the number of colleges that you should apply to. And believe it or not, now we recommend 10 to 12. When I applied, we applied to 3 or 4 and nobody categorized school as reach, target, likely. We all made fun of my college counselor. She was a crazy lady in the basement. No one makes fun of me. I'm a crazy lady, but I'm not in a basement, although you can't tell because I have my fake background. Anyway, so that application strategy includes number of schools and helping determine what are reach, target, and likely schools. And also, should you apply early decision, early action, restrictive early action, rolling? Oh my gosh, it is insane how many different iterations there are. Anything I'm missing there, co-coaches?
That was great.
Sounds good.
I see somebody in my
Hilarious.
high school, from my high school, saying she was crazy. That's hilarious. Hey, Colleen, how are you?
That is good. That's good.
Funny. That's
Um,
funny.
So
George, can I interrupt for just a moment? You did skip over a question asking if we have experience with students looking to study abroad, and if so, what countries? Yes, we do. And I personally would love to go on any college visits with you. So
There you go.
I'm available. for that.
Same.
So,
Love it.
we do have
Becky
that
is,
experience, so.
well, yeah, you don't have to take Greg. I wouldn't advise it. Trust me, I've worked with him. He is really high maintenance and the outfits. But Becky is our international specialist. Becky, can you talk a little bit about your globe trotting?
Sure. So I've had the good fortune of being able to visit a number of international universities. I will say most of them are in the UK and Ireland, but I also had the opportunity to go to Abu Dhabi, which was amazing, but that's another story for another time. Anyway, if you have the process to apply to an international university is much different than it is in the US. And if your student is interested in both or just international, then I would say it is important to talk to somebody who knows about what the differences are, what the nuances are, how that works, the timing, et cetera, because it's very different than applying to the US.
all right, super. Got a few more questions here, and I don't know how long you want to keep this rolling. 5:50, Kathleen.
Well,
Teacher
are you making
recommendations.
dinner or what? Are we doing takeout?
I'm hungry.
I think you're getting Chipotle. I've
Clearly.
heard that several times, just saying.
I think you're right. I think what I would recommend is maybe we hold here because we told people a half hour and we kept going and people are very polite and they're not jumping off to go watch Love Island or Real Housewives of Potomac, which I haven't been selected for yet. I mean, never mind, I don't live in Potomac and whatever, but we do want to thank you for joining. If we didn't get to your question tonight, please feel free to email us. George will put our emails in the chat, and this will be recorded and it'll be on our website. We encourage you to do a free introductory call with us to learn more. And we're really appreciative of you spending your time with us this evening. Thank you all very much.